I destroyed my marriage with 6 words spoken in a moment of drunken honesty. If I could rewind time and slap myself before those words left my mouth, I wouldn't hesitate for a second. My name is Clara. I'm 31, and my husband, ex-husband now, is Daniel, 36. We were together for 4 years before everything crumbled to dust. This isn't one of those stories where everything magically works out in the end. There's no silver lining, no redemptive arc, just the bitter reality of watching something beautiful die by your own hand. Let me start by saying that Daniel was extraordinary in the ways that truly matter. He wasn't the type to turn heads when he walked into a room, at least not in the conventional sense. He wasn't tall or particularly athletic. He didn't have that magnetic charisma that draws everyone's attention. What he did have was a quiet dignity, a steadfast reliability that you don't appreciate until it's gone. Daniel owned a small architecture firm that he'd built from nothing. He worked insane hours sometimes, but he never complained. He remembered the little things, how I liked my coffee on weekday mornings versus weekends, which songs made me happy when I was sad, the names of all my cousins, even though I have a ridiculously large family. He was the kind of man who would silently handle problems before they became disasters, the kind who showed love through actions rather than grand declarations. And I ruined it all. It started at what should have been a harmless happy hour with my colleagues from the marketing agency where I work. Thursday night, a few drinks to unwind after a stressful week. The plan was simple: a couple of cocktails, some appetizers, home by 9. But plans change, don't they? Especially when your coworker, Rebecca, gets a promotion and decides the whole team needs to celebrate with shots. Especially when you're feeling a strange, restless dissatisfaction that you can't quite name. Especially when you've been scrolling through Instagram too much lately, wondering why your life doesn't look like the filtered perfection you see on your screen. By the time I stumbled through our front door around midnight, I was well beyond tipsy. Daniel was waiting up, of course. He always did when I went out, not because he was controlling, but because he worried. He sat in the living room, the soft glow of his laptop illuminating his face as he worked on a project proposal. When I walked in, he closed his computer and looked up with that gentle smile of his. "Hey, you, have a good time." And that's when I said it. No provocation, no argument leading up to it. Just 6 words that I can never take back. I'm not attracted to you anymore. The way his face changed, God, I'll never forget it. It was like watching someone get hit by a car. First confusion, then shock, then this terrible, hollow understanding. I don't even remember going to bed that night. The next thing I knew, I was waking up with a splitting headache, my mouth dry as sandpaper, the morning sun feeling like needles in my eyes. Daniel was sitting at the edge of our bed, fully dressed, staring at his hands. "Is that how you really feel?" he asked, his voice so quiet, I almost didn't hear him. I had no idea what he was talking about. "What?" "Last night. You said you weren't attracted to me anymore." He finally looked at me, and the pain in his eyes made my stomach drop. "Is that true?" And that's when it all came rushing back. The memory hit me like a physical blow, leaving me breathless with horror. Had I actually said that out loud? To Daniel, of all people? "I was drunk," I stammered, pulling myself upright despite the pounding in my head. I didn't mean it. I don't even know why I said that. But even as the words left my mouth, A small, awful voice in the back of my mind whispered, "But didn't you mean it? Just a little?" I met Daniel 4 years ago at a charity auction for the Historical Society. He was there representing his architecture firm, which had donated design services. I was there because my agency handled the event's PR. I wouldn't say it was love at first sight. Daniel wasn't the type of man I usually went for. Before him, I dated a series of what my mother diplomatically called visually impressive men with the emotional depth of puddles. Men who looked great in photographs but couldn't remember my birthday. Men who turned heads but somehow never managed to listen when I spoke. Men whose attention made me feel special until I realized it was divided among half a dozen women. Daniel was different. When we first started talking at that auction, what struck me wasn't his appearance, but how intently he listened. He asked questions about me and actually waited for the answers. When I mentioned offhandedly that I collected vintage cameras, he remembered it 3 weeks later when we ran into each other at a coffee shop. Our relationship developed slowly, naturally. He courted me in an old-fashioned way, actual dates with plans, thoughtful gestures, genuine interest in my life and thoughts. For the first time, I felt truly seen by someone. When he proposed after 2 years, it wasn't a flashy public spectacle. He took me to the botanical gardens, to a quiet corner with a bench overlooking a koi pond, and told me he couldn't imagine his life without me. The ring wasn't enormous or trendy, but it was perfect, an antique setting he'd had restored, knowing my love for vintage things. Our first year of marriage was beautiful. We moved into a small house that Daniel had renovated himself, every detail thoughtfully designed with both of us in mind. We established routines, hosted dinner parties, planned for the future. Daniel was everything I thought I wanted: kind, stable, loving. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. I can't pinpoint exactly when or why it started. It wasn't dramatic. There was no catastrophic event, no betrayal or crisis, just a slow, insidious doubt that began to creep in like a fog. Maybe it was the constant exposure to social media, seeing the curated lives of others. Maybe it was my friends with their seemingly perfect relationships. Rebecca with her husband who competed in triathlons. Maya, whose boyfriend was a former model turned tech entrepreneur. Compared to them, Daniel seemed ordinary. I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. The way his clothes hung a little awkwardly on his frame, how he preferred quiet evenings at home to the restaurants and bars I featured in my Instagram stories, the fact that he had no interest in the gym culture that had become such a central part of my friend group's conversations. I began making subtle comments, little digs disguised as concern or teasing. That shirt makes you look a bit boxy, don't you think? Or maybe we could try that new workout class together? Or wouldn't it be fun to go to Bali like Jordan and his wife did? Daniel never got angry. Instead, he'd get this look, a brief flash of hurt quickly covered by understanding. "If you want me to change my style, just say so," he'd respond. Or, "I'm happy to try new things if it's important to you." His willingness to accommodate me should have been endearing, but somehow it only fueled my frustration. I wanted him to fight back, to show some fire. His calm acceptance felt like passivity to me, though I see now it was actually strength. The more I pulled away, the harder he tried to close the gap. Date nights, small gifts, messages during the day to check in. But rather than appreciating these gestures, I began to find them cloying. I started working later, spending more time with friends, creating distance without explicitly acknowledging it. One evening, about 6 months before the night that ended everything, we were getting ready to attend a work event of mine. I was anxious about the impression we would make. My boss would be there, as well as clients and colleagues. Daniel came downstairs wearing a perfectly acceptable blue button-down and gray slacks. Nothing wrong with the outfit, objectively, but in that moment, standing in our hallway, I felt a wave of irrational disappointment. "That's what you're wearing?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. He looked down at himself, confused. "Yes? Is there something wrong with it?" "No, it's fine," I said, though my tone made it clear it wasn't. "It's just, never mind. We should go or we'll be late." The drive to the event was silent. I could feel Daniel glancing at me, trying to understand what he'd done wrong, but I didn't offer any explanation. How could I explain something I didn't understand myself? How could I tell him that I was embarrassed by how normal he looked, how unremarkable he seemed, next to the polished, dynamic people I worked with? At the event, my insecurities only intensified. I watched as my colleagues introduced their partners, people who seemed to effortlessly fit the image of success and sophistication I was striving for. Meanwhile, Daniel stood slightly apart, nursing a single glass of wine, making polite conversation when approached, but not drawing attention. My boss's husband, a former college athlete with perfect teeth and designer clothes, spent 10 minutes regaling a group with stories of their recent trip to Monaco. I looked over at Daniel and felt a surge of resentment. Why couldn't he be more like that? More impressive, more dynamic, more something. What I failed to see was how people genuinely smiled when they finished talking to him, how my assistant pulled me aside to tell me how nice it was that Daniel had remembered her son's name and asked about his college applications. I missed how my difficult client relaxed in his presence, responding to his authentic interest and lack of pretense. All I saw was what I thought he lacked, not the abundance of what he offered. The comments from my friends didn't help. After meeting Daniel for the first time, my friend Vanessa pulled me aside with a puzzled expression. "He's nice," she said in a tone that suggested nice was a consolation prize. "But honey, he's so not what I expected for you. You always dated such hot guys before." I defended him then, of course, said all the right things about how looks aren't everything, how he treated me well, how happy we were. But her words lodged in my mind like a splinter, impossible to ignore and increasingly painful. Then there was Instagram, that digital hall of mirrors that distorts everything it reflects. I'd scroll through my feed, seeing couples posing on beaches in Tulum, hiking in Patagonia, clinking champagne glasses in Paris. They all looked so perfect, so enviable. When I'd look up from my phone at Daniel in his reading glasses, comfortable in worn jeans, engrossed in a book or sketching building plans, the contrast felt stark. I'd think, is this it? Is this all there is? What a fool I was. After my drunken confession that night, things changed irrevocably. Daniel didn't yell or make a scene. That wasn't his style. Instead, he retreated, pulling back emotionally in a way that was both subtle and devastating. The next morning, as I sat at our kitchen table, head in my hands, trying to explain that I didn't mean what I'd said, he just looked at me with those sad eyes. "I think you did mean it, Nat," he said quietly. "Maybe not consciously, but part of you meant it. And That's okay. We can't control what we feel or don't feel. No, that's not true, I insisted, panic rising in my chest. I love you. I've always loved you. I know you love me, he said, and the gentleness in his voice made it worse somehow. But that's not the same as being attracted to me, is it? I couldn't answer. The truth was, I didn't know anymore. Had I ever been truly attracted to Daniel in the way I'd been to the men before him? Or had I chosen him precisely because he was different, because he offered something beyond physical attraction? The days that followed were excruciating. Daniel didn't mention our conversation again, but everything changed. He started leaving for work earlier, coming home later. When we were in the same room, he maintained a polite distance, like we were acquaintances, rather than spouses. I tried everything I could think of to fix it. I cooked his favorite meals. I suggested weekend trips to places he'd mentioned wanting to visit. I even attempted to initiate intimacy one night, something that had become increasingly rare in our marriage. He stopped me with a hand on my wrist, his expression pained. Don't, Nat, not like this. Like what? I asked, feeling tears welling up. Like you're trying to convince yourself of something you don't feel. A week after my drunken confession, I reached a breaking point. The silence in our house was suffocating me. I cornered Daniel in his home office, determined to have it out once and for all. We can't go on like this, I said, standing in the doorway so he couldn't leave. You can't just shut me out. He looked up from his computer, and I was struck by how tired he looked. I'm not shutting you out, Clara. I'm giving you space to figure out what you really want. I want you, I exclaimed, my voice rising with frustration. I want our marriage. Why is that so hard to believe? Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. Because I don't think you do. Not really. I think you want the idea of me, reliable, safe Daniel who takes care of things. But you don't want me, the actual person. His words hit me like a physical blow. That's not fair, I whispered. Isn't it? He asked, standing up now. When was the last time you were actually interested in my work, or asked about my day and really listened to the answer? When was the last time you looked at me, really looked at me, without that little crease between your eyebrows, like you're wondering how you ended up with someone like me? I opened my mouth to deny it, but nothing came out, because he was right. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped seeing Daniel. I'd started seeing only what he wasn't, rather than all that he was. I think we need some time apart, he said finally. I love you, Clara. I've loved you since the moment you started arguing with me about Art Deco architecture at that charity auction, even though you had no idea what you were talking about. Despite everything, that made me smile a little. I'd been so adamant, so wrong, and he'd found it charming rather than annoying. But I can't be with someone who sees me as a disappointment, he continued, his voice breaking slightly. It's killing me. I look at you looking at me, and I see it in your eyes, this constant assessment, this weighing of my worth, and I always come up short. Daniel, no, I protested, but it sounded weak, even to my own ears. I'm going to stay with my brother for a while, he said, turning back to his computer. We both need to think about what we really want. He moved out the next day, just a small suitcase and his laptop. He said it was temporary, that we just needed space to gain perspective. But as I watched him walk to his car from our front window, I had a sinking feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. The weeks that followed were a blur of regret and self-recrimination. I oscillated between desperate attempts to win Daniel back and angry defensiveness. How dare he leave over one drunken comment? Didn't our marriage mean more than that? Didn't 4 years together count for anything? But in my more honest moments, usually late at night when I couldn't sleep in our too-empty bed, I knew it wasn't just about those 6 words. It was about all the small moments that had led up to them, all the ways I had subtly but persistently communicated to Daniel that he wasn't enough. I started seeing a therapist, initially with the goal of getting Daniel back, but gradually for my own sake. Dr. Hammond didn't give me easy answers or quick fixes. Instead, she asked questions that forced me to examine patterns I'd been blind to. Do you think it's possible, she asked during one session, that you chose Daniel precisely because he was different from your previous partners, but then resented him for those same differences? I'd never thought of it that way, but the question lingered with me. Had I wanted Daniel's stability and kindness, but also expected him to somehow transform into someone more exciting, more impressive? Had I set him up to fail by wanting contradictory things? Meanwhile, Daniel and I communicated primarily through text messages, brief and carefully worded. We met once for coffee, a stilted conversation where we mostly discussed practical matters like bills and our lease. He looked good, not dramatically different, but there was a lightness to him that made my heart ache. "Are you doing okay?" I asked as we were preparing to leave. He considered the question, head tilted slightly, in that way he had when he was truly thinking about his answer rather than just responding automatically. "I'm getting there," he said finally. "It's been hard, but also clarifying in some ways." I wanted to ask what he meant by that, but I was afraid of the answer. 3 months after our separation, I saw Daniel at a restaurant with another woman. I was there with my friend Maya, and they were seated across the room. I spotted him immediately. I'd always been attuned to his presence in a way I hadn't fully appreciated until he was gone. The woman with him was laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She wasn't conventionally stunning in the way my friends had expected me to end up with. She had glasses and a warm smile, and she was looking at Daniel like he was the most fascinating person she'd ever met. And Daniel was radiant. He was animated in a way I rarely saw him, leaning forward, talking with his hands the way he did when he was excited about something. He looked happy in a way that made my chest physically hurt. Maya followed my gaze and winced in sympathy. "That's rough," she said. "Do you want to leave?" I shook my head, unable to tear my eyes away. "No, it's fine. I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. I was shattered by the realization that Daniel could be that person. Engaged, dynamic, captivating, when he was with someone who truly saw him. Had he never been that way with me? Or had I simply failed to notice, too busy looking for what he lacked rather than what he offered? Later that night, after too much wine and a good cry, I sent Daniel a text I immediately regretted. "She seems nice. I hope she appreciates you more than I did." He didn't respond until the following morning. "Clara, I think we should talk. Really talk." "Can we meet this weekend?" We met at a park, neutral territory. It was a crisp autumn day, leaves crunching under our feet as we walked side by side without touching. "I'm sorry about that text," I said after an awkward silence. "I had no right." "It's okay," he said. "But I think we need to be honest with each other. Completely honest, even if it hurts. I nodded, bracing myself. "I've filed for divorce," he said quietly. Even though I'd been half expecting it, the words still felt like a physical blow. "I see," I managed to say. "I don't think either of us has been happy for a long time," he continued, "and staying together out of obligation or fear isn't going to change that." "Is it because of her?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "The woman from the restaurant?" Daniel stopped walking and turned to face me. "No, it's not because of Claire, though I won't lie to you. I am seeing her. It's because we want different things, Nat. We always have, I think, but we tried to ignore it because we loved each other." "I do love you," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "I know," he said, and I could see he was fighting back tears too. "I love you too, but love isn't always enough." He reached out and took my hand, a gesture so familiar it made my heart contract painfully. "You deserve someone who excites you, who fits into the life you want," he said gently. "And I deserve someone who sees me, really sees me, and values what I am, not what I'm not." The truth of his words washed over me like a wave, leaving me breathless. He was right. As much as it hurt to admit, he was absolutely right. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Daniel was fair in every way, even generous. He let me keep the house, though I ended up selling it. Too many memories haunted those rooms. I moved into a modern apartment downtown, closer to my office and the vibrant social life I'd always thought I wanted. I saw Daniel and Claire last week unexpectedly at a gallery opening. They didn't see me and I didn't approach them. I just watched from across the room as they examined a sculpture together. Heads bent close, entirely absorbed in their conversation and each other. She was wearing an engagement ring. The strange thing is, I wasn't devastated. Sad, yes. Regretful, absolutely. But there was also a kind of peace in seeing Daniel so obviously happy, so clearly with someone who appreciated him exactly as he was. I'm not going to pretend I've had some magical transformation. I still struggle with the same insecurities, the same tendency to compare my life to the filtered versions I see online. But I'm working on it. Dr. Hammond and I have been diving deep into why I value the things I do, why external validation has always been so important to me. "What do you really want, Clara?" she asked in our last session. "Not what you think you should want or what would look good to others. What would make you personally happy?" It's a question I'm still trying to answer, but I know this much. I don't want to make the same mistake twice. I don't want to overlook what matters because I'm too busy chasing what glitters. Sometimes I think about those 6 words that destroyed my marriage. I'm not attracted to you anymore. The irony is, I think what I was really saying was that I wasn't attracted to myself, to the person I became when I was with Daniel. I wasn't attracted to the simple life we'd built, the ordinary moments that make up most of existence. I wanted drama, excitement, validation from others. What I failed to see was that the quiet moments, Daniel sketching by lamplight, the way he remembered how I took my coffee, his hand finding mine in the dark, those were the real treasures. And I threw them away because they didn't look good on Instagram. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, please take a hard look at what you have before you decide it's not enough. Ask yourself if you're chasing happiness or just the appearance of it. And remember that sometimes the most precious things are the ones that don't shine the brightest at first glance. As for me, I'm learning to live with the consequences of my choices. I'm dating again, cautiously. I'm trying to be more honest with others, but especially with myself, about what I truly want and value. Daniel is getting married in the spring. I know this because his brother told me, not unkindly, thinking I would want to know. I sent a congratulatory text that he responded to with simple gratitude. There's no animosity between us now, just the sad recognition of something valuable that was lost through neglect. I hope he's happy. I really do. And I hope someday I can be happy too. Not in the shallow performative way I once sought, but in a way that feels true and lasting. My name is Clara. I'm 31 years old, and this is the story of how I learned, too late, to see the beauty in what I already had.